The meeting is now open for the sharing of testimonies of healing through Christian Science. Donna from Oregon, go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I'd like to share a healing I had recently. The Friday after Christmas, I was having some alarming symptoms of something quite serious. I studied several things that I often find helpful, but this time nothing seemed to work. So I called my practitioner for help. She was very sweet and caring and said she would help me. She said if I needed to call her over the weekend to do so. I didn't want to bother her later because it was the New Year's Eve weekend, and I thought she might have plans. It wasn't long before I felt better, and I continued to improve all day. By bedtime, I was completely okay and didn't need to call her over the weekend after all. It's so wonderful to have help like this when we need it, and there are no bad side effects. There are good side effects, but no bad ones. I am so grateful to God and my practitioner for their ever-present help in trouble. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeremy.
I am very grateful tonight for this church and for these Wednesday night testimony meetings. I really enjoy going over the weekly blessings that Christian Science and being a member of this church brings. And it is wonderful to have this time to give testimonies. I felt I needed to give gratitude for every moment that God is with me while I do my work each day. A lot of things come up and His help is right there for all the technical things I do, and I'm very grateful. And without getting too geeky about it, when I need to write an email, God is there with the words. When printing the magazine or full textbooks, He is there. If something is needed on the website, He is ready to guide me. If a new program is needed, God has already had people working on it and shows me right where to get it. While editing audio, He shows me just what to do. In every aspect of this work, even on things I have done for 20 years, He is always teaching me. I'm just so thankful that no matter what I am doing, relying on God is the answer. Christian Science, as I am learning here, has brought such peace and joy and clarity each day. It is wonderful to be useful. I'm grateful to God, this church, and my practitioner for all that being here has brought. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom from Iowa, go ahead.
Not too long before the service tonight, I had a strange experience, and it's something that's been going on for a time. But I was led to the book published by this church entitled Christian Science, Its Clear and Correct Teaching and Complete Writings by Herbert Eustace. In this book, there's a chapter called Factors in Healing. And that which was coming to me I knew was evil, but it was more specifically hypnotic suggestion, and it was coming very aggressively and forcefully. So to make a long story short, I looked up these different claims in the book, and such as diabetes and infection and Bright's disease, just in case. And there was many listed in there, and I read and studied prayerfully and faithfully, and I think the claim was finally met, for which I am grateful. I also wanted to reiterate the many physical, moral, and spiritual healings I've had through this church and through practitioner support, which I've received in the past and have been still receiving, for which I can't be thankful enough. And this is not meant in any crude way, but is a sincere and just acknowledgement of the help and benefit I've received through this church, and I'm very satisfied with the healings. Thank you.
Thank you. Colleen from Massachusetts, go ahead.
Good evening. I'm learning at this church that I really need to stand up to fear. I've had healings in the past, and in those healings, I'm using them to confront my fears about some present issues. For instance, I had a healing a couple of years ago of a breathing problem, which was persistent, and it was pretty scary. And I finally gave up all self-will, and I said to God, thy will be done. And I just knew that God wouldn't let me die that night, and I did nothing. And within a few seconds, I was completely healed. And I've never had another breathing problem, and I had had that for many years. Before Christian Science, I would take all kinds of inhalers and medicine, and it was pretty bad. And I gave all that up, but I still persisted with the breathing problems. And when I've recently been confronted with some problems, physical problems, I go back to that and I say, well, why did that happen? And I said, well, I gave up a belief in a life separate from God. And I said, thy will be done. And so I'm facing these fears, and the problems I'm having recently, I say them out loud to myself when I'm by myself, and I confront them as if, I talk it down, and it's helping me to make nothing of it. So I'm learning to face my fears and to confront them and to destroy them. And I'm learning that through this church, and I'm very grateful for everything that I am learning here. Thank you.
Thank you. Luann from New York, go ahead.
Thank you. Since coming here to study Christian Science, I have been healed of the effects of abuse and many unpleasant and self-serving behaviors that I'm very pleased to be rid of. The difference in my life now as compared to how destructive and painful it was before is remarkable. These changes came slowly with persistence and prayer, gaining knowledge through the Bible studies and roundtable discussions, the articles, and the wonderful support I have received from my practitioner, whose loving correction and the endless supply of truth guide me to live rightly and to have a genuine desire to do what is pleasing to God. Each new day brings me closer to God and understanding my relationship to Him. I am more patient, more loving, less inclined to think negative thoughts, and slow to react when things are not going as I think they should. I trust God and wait patiently for His will to be done. As a result, new people are coming into my life. Opportunities have opened up to me that I had closed myself off to before. I no longer stress about money or the future. My relationship is better, and everyday living is less chaotic. I came across this quote one day: "There is no mind so hardened that it cannot change. There is no mortal emotions impervious to divine love." How true it is. When we put God first in our lives, change does come. For the longest time, I thought nothing good would ever come into my life. I believed life was not worth living. Because of Christian Science, turning my focus to God, raising my expectations heavenward, teaching me what is required, I now embrace life and praise God for it every day. I am finding the kingdom within to be what it is promised to be, so far as I understand. Life is not a tragedy that needs to be endured. Christian Science shows us, no matter how grim the human problem may seem, we can always wake up spiritually with the truth that makes us free. I am very grateful for all I've been given and for all the work and dedication of the members of this church who bring God into focus for me and all of mankind. Thank you.
Thank you. Chardell.
Tonight, I would like to offer gratitude for our lesson sermons. It occurred to me how my life is changing, and when thinking about this, I realized that much of what goes on here at the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent has to do with these inspired lessons. Our Bible lessons and round-table discussions are based on the weekly lesson provided by a small group of dedicated, divinely directed workers, not all of whom actually reside in Plainfield. Also, the weekly forum posts are written because of thoughtful consideration given to the lesson and then shared publicly for inspiration and spiritual growth. The forum is then edited and made into forum highlights, which is then shared on our website and mailed to many. These lesson sermons are an awesome undertaking that bless so many people all over the globe. The more I think about this extraordinary endeavor, the more reverential I become. Thank you.
Thank you. Linda.
Good evening. Thank you for the readings and the music tonight. Tonight I want to express my gratitude for the forum on our website. Last week we had a post that made me appreciate the teaching that is going on here at Plainfield to help us understand how to be Jesus' disciples. In the post it mentioned that Jesus said, "If ye abide in me, then are ye my disciples." I realized he didn't just say, "Repeat my words and it'll all be right." Before Plainfield, I was under the impression that all you needed to do was repeat statements. I had no real concept of what it meant to live this science. It was like having math problems to solve without understanding math rules. Now, step by step, doing practical work on my thinking and attitude with biblical statements and the science and health, all this has more meaning for me. One of the statements from our Bible tells us to trust the Lord with all our heart, not to lean on our own understanding, to acknowledge him and he will direct our paths, and not to be wise in our own eyes, which has been a real learning curve for me, letting go of my human will. This last week, my son needed to sign up for some college classes, and there were about 5 obstacles to the process, and some of them involved me. I was really grateful that each obstacle melted away and the process was completed quickly and in an orderly, timely manner. I felt a leading to help him on a particular day, which turned out that there was a deadline I was unaware of and which only allowed 2 more days to get done what we needed to do. And that was the only opportunity, was the time we did that would have worked for me. So I was very grateful for that protection, both schedulally and financially. I'm learning here that we don't need to be subject to all the things that can go wrong, but have a law of God to depend on when you live in obedience to it. I'm very grateful for this church that teaches this science correctly, for Mary Baker Eddy, and for Christ Jesus. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Bruce. I'd like to offer my thanks for that I consider be an awesome privilege to be associated with this church and have the privilege of learning real Christian science. This church found me at a time when I was very low in my life, and sometimes the memory of that condition is going to be a bit daunting. But we had a wonderful hymn that we just sang, hymn number 224, and one of the passages in this hymn says, "When all material streams are dried, thy fullness is the same." And I can remember years ago reading that passage from that hymn, and it gave me the spark of hope to pick up and carry on. And fortunately, being associated with this church, I had much to carry on with. And loving instruction and guidance from a practitioner and teacher. Classes that opened up my eyes to really what's being said in our textbook and the inspired word of the Bible. And sure enough, God's fullness really is the same always, regardless of how the material world would like to present itself to us. So I'm thankful for the lessons that I've learned all along, and that God's fullness is always the same, and it's all good. Jim from Arizona, go ahead.
Good evening. Today I was working on future newsletters. Some of this activity moves on along very smoothly, and yet many other times the progress is a bit slow. I revised the next newsletter and have 2 pages completed. Should anyone have any future edition, they would be most gratefully received. I was also able to get the first column completed for the next newsletters for the whole remainder of the year. I'm most grateful for this opportunity that this provides. I'm also most grateful for our Bible classes and roundtable. Again, thank you for the wonderful organ prelude this evening. Thank you.
Thank you. Fairley from Maryland, go ahead.
Thank you. Last week, a testifier, Carol, mentioned something from Science and Health. Truth, life, and love are a law of annihilation to everything unlike themselves. And in her experience, living the best she could, she was protected from a possibly bad situation. Well, I had an experience yesterday but it was the most amazing help. I was driving out and found out that the weather was so much more threatening than I had realized, and that the wet streets were freezing, and some businesses were closing early. So I canceled my plans and decided to return back home instead. And in trying to get out of the parking lot, there were people the traffic was just piled up, and there were 3 lanes of traffic, and I needed to get over in the far lane. But people are good here. I mean, they do let you in. But it was, it was a strong situation, but it was okay. And I really didn't need help, but the most amazing thing happened. A youngish-looking man, maybe 35 or 40, tall, very straight, he suddenly, in front of me, right behind me, just walked out into the middle of 3 lanes of traffic with his arms out in order to lay a path for me. And so the cars all stopped, and I went across 3 lanes and got into the left lane so I could go right home. And I felt like, well, maybe this is because I'm at Plainfield, and I'm trying to live truth, life, and love the best I can. And I was very grateful for that experience. It was beautiful. Thank you very much for the readings tonight. The allness of God and the unreality of matter. All this teaching is so important, and I'm so grateful for all that I'm learning at Plainfield. I'm very grateful for my practitioner and all the help she's given me all these years that I've been there, and the roundtables and the Bible studies, and for all the love. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Lil.
Thank you for the beautiful music and readings. I'm grateful for a recent working out of an unusual situation. For a short while, my car has desperately needed a car wash, but I couldn't because it needed a spot repaired, and the timing wasn't working out for it to happen yet. Yesterday, my brother was able to do the repair, and beautifully. Today, I went for the car wash, but was told by the manager there that the coupon I had to pay for it was no longer being honored, but that he would honor the coupon. Everything worked out perfectly and beautifully, thanks to God and practitioner help. God is always there to help us in any situation. Thank you.
Thank you. Dede from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. I want to express gratitude for the most recent roundtable discussion, which included the idea of rushing and pointed out plainly that rushing around has no God in it. Though this was only a few days ago, it has already blessed me tremendously. As this week I found myself rushing at home, rushing to work, rushing at work, at the store, etc. In each case, I was quickly reminded of the lesson not to rush, as I was forced to be honest with myself while realizing that I have made this a regular practice. I'm grateful for the reminder found in our textbook that we can at once change our course and do right. And I'm grateful to know that there's no delay required to practice the truth that we're learning here. I've already seen great improvement by allowing God to guide me more and trusting in His timing. And I look forward to continuing to go higher with this. I'm so grateful for all that's going on here, every lesson learned, for all the works that we are all doing together. Thank you so much for tonight's meeting, for tonight's readings, and all the testimonies.
Thank you. Gary.
Well, I'm grateful for another experience I had today that may not sound like much, but was just, to me, was wonderful. In my work, I do most of my work in New Jersey, which is not too far from my home, but every once in a while I have to go into New York City to work. And it's a very long commute, both ways. And I rarely ever do it on Wednesdays because it usually doesn't give me enough time to get home and really do a good job of preparing for church. And tonight, I really needed to prepare because I was doing some reading. Well, I had an important meeting in New York today, so today ended up being the day that I had to go into New York City. And it turned out to be a busier day than we expected. And I began to be a little concerned about being able to finish what we needed to finish in order to catch an early enough train to get me home in time. And then in the middle of the day, our chief counsel from London sent us some news that was not good news, and it dumped another project on us that we had to move on quickly. And my first thought was, oh my gosh, I'll never be able to get home in time for church tonight. But then I stopped and thought, well, no. I'm here because God wants me here, and I have work to do for God tonight. So God, you tell me what I really need to do, and I'll count on you to get me home on the train that I need to get on. Well, we split things up in the office, and I did what I felt I needed to do. And when there was just barely enough time left, I said, I'm going to the train station. And I prayed to God I would have enough time. Well, I have to catch a subway to the train station, and then I get to the train station, I have to buy a ticket. Well, when I got to the subway station, instead of having to wait for a train, there was one waiting for me. And I got right on it. And when I got to the train station, Instead of there being a long line to get a ticket like there usually is, there was no line. And I got my ticket in about 10 seconds. Well, throughout this whole thing, I just thanked God for clearing the way. And I made the train with about 2 minutes to spare. I was so grateful to see God getting me home at the right time. So anyway, I share this because God does work in our lives in every way if we allow him to do so. And I'm grateful that God got me here tonight. It's good to be here.
Thank you. Florence from Georgia, go ahead.
Thank you. I'm so grateful for the readings tonight. They're very inspiring. Thank you for the choice of theme, the allness of God and nothingness of matter, because I know more and more now that it is the central point of our practice. I know that it is through Christian Science, how it explains God and man, that I have learned that I am spiritual, and to have this point clearly in my thinking. I know that before Christian Science, or even at the beginning of my study of Christian Science, when something was wrong, I would just speak the truth. But I was speaking it to matter, to the pain or to whatever the circumstance was. I had no clue that I had to first see that whatever was presenting was not true, was erroneous. And then from then, use the truth to overcome the lie. I did this for many years, and of course, I had no good results. I am so grateful that Mrs. Eddy clearly tells us that we must learn how to handle mental malpractice. And she teaches that the greatest blow to any error is to see the unreality of it. Learning this has made such a difference in the result that I get. He's telling us that Spirit, God, is all, and nothing else is real. And I am so grateful that the articles on our website, I cannot say enough about them, from Bicknell Young, Martha Wilcox, Herbert Eustace. So many articles are on that website that when anything comes up, you can just pray to God to be led to one or two articles which always have a counterfact to the lie that is presenting. I am so grateful for this because I don't think without this church and what it teaches, emphasizes, so that we can be awake to what's trying to enslave us, I would have gotten this far at all in Christian Science. I am so grateful for what I'm still learning. These books that these early workers have sacrificed to write for us are invaluable. I am grateful that this website is God's work. He's blessing the whole world with what's on there. And I'm grateful to be here, to be a part of this. Thank you so much for all the testimonies and the music and the hymns. Grateful, very grateful to be here tonight.
Thank you. Mary.
We have some notes from people. The first, Maryland. With grateful appreciation for the devotion of the members of the Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent to their demonstration of the, quote, structure of truth and love, end quote, which continues to bless mankind. And that quote was from Science and Health, definition of church. And then Mississippi. Dear Plainfield Church members, so grateful for the truth and love expressed and demonstrated by Plainfield Christian Science Church independent members. The lessons, Bible study, watches, website, and all that is available on it is tremendous. Just when I think the website is best ever, it is bested by the perfection of God continually unfolding. Thank you for the readings and teaching. I'm so grateful for the example of Jesus Christ and Mary Baker Eddy. God bless you all. And then Pennsylvania, dear Plainfield Christian Science Church Independent, I love your website and visit it quite often. Enclosed, find a check to support the cost of maintaining it. With appreciation. California, dear friends, thank you for this church that has made such a difference in my life. Nowhere else is the truth and love of Mrs. Eddy's pure Christian Science taught as it is in the Plainfield Church. Many thanks to all who contribute and participate in the services, Bible studies, roundtables, publications, website, and watches. So much good going on to go out to bless the world. Enclosed is my check and monthly contribution. And then Oregon, I'm sending my yearly donation for 2018, but no amount is enough when I think about how valuable Christian Science is. I feel so blessed that I was led to this wonderful religion, so full of provable information. Thank you. And then Virginia. Dear fellow members, greetings to all. I am very grateful for all the lessons, uplift, and joy and activity in this church that has been provided in the past year. I'm looking forward to much of the same in the coming year as we all work and grow together, sending love and healing out to the world with love and gratitude. And I believe all of those notes came with contributions, which we are so grateful for. As you know, our church runs on contributions. We offer everything on our website free. And the only way we can do that is if we get your support. So we're very grateful. Thank you. Thank you. And then this from the church website bulletin board. This is Massachusetts, an excerpt from Mary Baker Eddy, Christian Healer. Mrs. Eddy wrote the following to students who gave her a copy of Wycliffe's translation of the New Testament. Quote, "Today it is a marvel to me that God chose me for this mission, and that my life work was the theme of ancient prophecy, and I the scribe of his infinite way of salvation. Oh, may he keep me at the feet of Christ, cleansing the human understanding and bathing it with my tears, wiping it with the hairs of my head and the shreds of my understanding that God numbered to make men wise unto salvation." End quote. I'm in awe of Mrs. Eddy's great love and humility. And then Florida, thank you for the recent forum highlights. This service is so helpful as I always see something in a new light while reading the hard copy. I appreciate all the thoughtful feedback provided during the weekly forum. Thanks again for the wonderful resources available at Plainfield and also the quick delivery on items ordered from the bookstore. Joyful blessings. I'm grateful tonight to be here for the wonderful music and readings and testimonies, the readings on the allness of God, Spirit, and the nothingness of matter. That's a deep, sort of profound topic. We have found it very interesting that while Mrs. Eddy was getting this directly from God, as explained in our textbook, Science and Health, Albert Einstein, as a scientist, was also getting it scientifically and mathematically. He understood the unreality of matter, and because of that, when he eventually read Science and Health, he was so very grateful for that textbook and saw it to be a revelation, saw it to be the truth, and he had spoken to someone in the Princeton reading room. If we only knew, if all of us only really knew what was in that textbook, our churches would be bulging because it is the truth, in many ways ahead of its time. But the idea of the allness of God and the nothingness of matter, and that includes evil, sin, disease, and death, is a provable fact. Jesus Christ proved it, and we are proving it today with healing. Either you stand, Mrs. Eddy says you stand, you fight it out, just as Grant did in the war. You fight it out on the basis that all is God, all is spirit, and you fight it out for as long as it's going to take you. Otherwise, you get into this mishmash of where did all this evil come from and you go round and around. No, if God didn't make it, it's not the truth, and we can prove it, and we have been proving it. So I thank God for Mrs. Eddy, for her pioneer work, leading us into this divine science, which brings so many blessings to all of us here and to all mankind as we pray earnestly every day for their redemptions. Thank you all.
Thank you.